to welcome everybody back into our next version of the bi-weekly webinar. And this one is kind of one that I'm hoping you'll sit through. Like I said, I've made a lot of mistakes throughout my career and things that I've done over the 28 plus years that I've actually been coaching. And along the way, I've picked up a couple things. Now, sent out a survey to some of our club coaching directors, and one of the things that came back most often was this topic. And so hopefully I can share some of the experiences that I've had, as well as help you out through the process. But as you start to look through it, one of the things I want to do is encourage you, as you have questions, to go and unmute yourself, or if you have comments to help out the conversation, that would be awesome. Because at the end of the day, we want to produce this on the back end, especially for all of our coaches, to provide information that'll last beyond, both on the YouTube channel and within the chat right here. But the first thing I want you to do is just kind of take a second. And what do you think it is? So what do you think the most important thing to do when you're in this situation? So when you're in that upset parent situation. So if you'll type that in the chat right quick, just take a second. I like it, Liz. It's very, very nice. So Liz said, listen and stay calm. She even got a thumbs up with it from Ben. What else do you guys see? So what are the things that you think is the most important thing? That 24-hour rule, we're going to talk about that. Stick to your guns as a coach. Interesting. Like Jed, maintain calm and professionalism. But it sounds like we got a lot of people that are able to teach the things. So I think you'll see a lot of those things pop up. Anything else that you guys see on that side? All right, so let's kind of look at some of the things we've gotten. I think all those are good points. So I think we're well on our way. But I'll tell you what, in the very first rounds of coaching, to me, this was always a contest of wills. So we had somebody come in and they were upset over whatever, whether it be playing time or the way their child was treated or anything like that. Because it's one thing you'll find out is that parents, once you involve their kid, they change as a human being, the way they act and the way they respond to things. And I myself is guilty as a parent as well. What we want to do is it's not a contest. It's not a you versus them. And in the early years of teaching in the school system, I made a huge mistake in doing this. A lot of time with parents, I do the same thing. When I'd have a concerned parent or coach come in and they would discuss things, it was also always aggressive and always came back fighting hard and strong and tried to make a point. Unfortunately, that was the exact wrong thing to do. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at it. We're going to kind of listen to them and try to figure out where they're coming from. And by doing that, we can figure out a solution to a problem rather than creating a bigger problem. And so here's what I got to add to it and kind of talk through some of these things. First thing, most important thing, your body language is huge, right? So how you come in, how you respond, as long as you sit back, you're calm, lean forward a little bit, eye contact, we want to do that. Want to remain calm, and somebody already said that within the chat. That's huge, right? So they're going to say all kinds of things, and I've had the most aggressive where it was after a game when I was in Midland High. Had a parent come in the deal and threaten me, but the best part about it was just remain calm. Hey, let's discuss this later. There's enough time or place, and find a way to stay that way. Because if you amp up, if you start reacting, they're going to meet you in kind, and so that battle ensues. Be confident and caring. Because, just kind of by a show of hands, when I look around, how many of y'all are parents, have your own kids? And so it looks like a majority of us have it. Poor Mike, we're losing him. Such an engaging conversation. But so as we're looking at this thing, so all parents, everybody's been in the same portion or maybe have the same issues where this person, most of the time, they're coming in with a problem that's serious. Now, there's times you're going to have that super upset person. But sometimes they're coming in with a problem that they have, and be caring. Listen to what they have to say, and it will go a lot further. Next thing I found is be humble, right? When you start throwing the ego out in front, chances are things aren't going to go the way you want it to go, right? Don't make aggressive or argumentative comments. So if you're starting to try to calm things down to get back in to try to actually get to some kind of solution, you don't want to be aggressive or mean or go at these people, because at the end of the day, they're there fighting for their child. And as most of you guys on the call are parents, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Next thing is, don't take anything personally. And that is so hard sometimes, right? I've had like I said, the parent that came after the game. I've had parents that have called me all kinds of names, but the best thing is just kind of remain calm, listen to them, and try to come out and understand where they're coming from. Next thing that gets you in a lot of trouble really quick is don't make any kind of insulting comments about them or especially their child. And it's wild. I had this actually happen with my daughter. I went to the parent night thing, and the teachers opened up with, you know, should I tell your dad about what you did? Oh my God. Instantly I puffed up, right? Because I thought, hold on a second, And then my daughter just started bawling. And I thought, wow, what a terrible way to open up a conversation with somebody. Now, if there was an issue, I want her to tell me about it. I want the teacher to say it so I can discuss it and fix it and take care of my kid. But as a parent, you instantly become defensive. And if a ball is their child, this is one of the most important things because there's a lot of times in those of y'all that coached or taught, a lot of times the parent or the child will play you versus the parent, if that makes sense. So whenever I had a parent conference, I made sure that I had the kid with us at the conference to actually ask questions of the child to understand. Because a lot of times it's not between you and the parent, but rather the child and you. So we want that person in there to make sure we clear up any misconceptions of what happens. And with that, I'm going to open up to you guys because I know within this group there's a wealth of knowledge and we got quite a big group today. What things have you guys seen, or does anybody have any experience they want to add to it or thoughts to add to it? And Liz, you want to add anything to it? Because I know you've been nodding your head for me. What do you got?
Well, this is my first, ending up my first full year as a team manager, and my husband's also coaching another team. And so I'm curious what kind of nuance needs to be there for when a parent comes to you upset about something involving another player or another player's parents, because we have that happen from time to time where they come to either the coach or me upset about, well, this other player, something, something, something. And we know that there's things we can and cannot say about other players to other parents. So,
Perfect.
What perspective y'all have on that?
I've got it, and I'm going to address that here towards the end, but hold that question. Okay, so yeah, because that's a big one, and 100% that's actually coming up later, but I'm going to nuance it to that. But anybody else have comments or things they've experienced just with this contest, not a winner or a loser? Things that you've experienced that might help us out within the conversation. All right. Hey, with that, we'll kind of motion to the next one. Next part, huge. And here's what I need you to understand. Whenever you're meeting with a parent, make sure you have another witness with you. And it's best if it's not like a husband and wife or a significant other. It's best if you have another person, like an assistant coach with you. This is probably one of the most important things in the fact that there always becomes a he said, she said. So if it ends up going to safe sport or goes somewhere around like that, you want to make sure within that deal you have a person that's witnessing the conversation so it's not taken in a different way. That's one of the big ones. The next thing is don't meet over the phone. So if somebody's upset, it's better to meet one-on-one with a person at a place outside the venue. Obviously, we're going to talk about in a minute, but not in the practice field, not there, but find maybe a coffee shop or something where you can sit down and have the conversation. But always, always, always have somebody else with you at the same time. And there's two things that'll happen. That way they can't come back later and said, well, you said this. Or if it gets a little aggressive, then you got somebody else there too. And Liz, that's an unbelievably good point. Do not do anything over text messaging. That's by far the worst thing to communicate on any, and add that in my list of stuff. Because you can never tell tone, you can never tell what their body language is, what they're feeling. It's got to be, if something's upset, it's better always do this one-on-one, face-to-face, because we get lost a lot in emails, text messages. You can never get tone, never get understanding what's going on. Excellent point, Liz. Anybody else have anything to add? So as we start to look at the next part, kind of like I said, get away from the field, right? So sometimes environment's important. So if it's been a practice site and that's a place where the occurrence or whatever they're upset about is happening, or especially after a game, something like that, get them to an open place, and it would almost be, if you have an office available, that, or if you can go to like a coffee shop or something where you can sit down across the table, face to face, meeting the person in a place that's not a soccer related or soccer venue, if that makes sense. So we're trying to find a way to kind of defuse a lot of the problems that are going to happen. This is that, and somebody brought up the 24-hour rule earlier. 100% correct. Don't meet right after a practice or game. Always allow the cool down period. Because a lot of times, if it's, say, for example, in Liz's example that she had about the upset about another parent, upset another kid, we want to get them time to relax and think about what they had. Because sometimes we're at our worst after a game. And I think all of y'all have been on the soccer field. You see the worst of people come out when we're in that environment. And within about 30 to 40 minutes, they're still fired up about whatever the situation is. So we want to allow that 24-hour period of time. That's going to be a big one. Let them time to cool off. If they come up after and say, we need to talk about it now, I said, no, let's wait just a little bit. Let's give a little time and let's look at trying to get together and meet, within the next couple of days, but do not do it right away. And then once again, it's not trying to build up a case to fire at these people. And we talked about this before. Make sure you have the player with them. So if it's an issue between you and the player, you and playing time, always have the child there with them. The reason being is then it never comes down to you said this, and my kid said you said this, or my kid said you did this, or the child's right there. And that's unbelievably important to come up to a resolution. The next part, and this is going to be hard to swallow for a lot of us. I want you to, when you go into that meeting, to listen. Listen to what they have to say, because within every single complaint, there's still a little bit of truth. So there might be something that actually you can learn from the situation. And what we want to do is want to get out from whatever it is that the parent has a complaint about. We want to understand where they're coming from, be able to arrive at a solution and understand that if they're upset, there's something within them that they're actually upset about. It's going to be important for us to find the solution to it. Now, they're not always going to be happy, right? You're not always going to come up with a 100% solution. We'll talk about that stuff at the end, but always listen to what they have to say. And so when we talk about that, we're going to go a little bit further. It's important, and we're going to go back to body language again, that when you do this, you're active listening. So if you're at the coffee shop, you got the table, make sure you have a pen and piece of paper with you, right? And this is an old trick, and there's going to be a book I'm going to reference later that actually talks about this. But if you have that pen and piece of paper and you're writing down stuff as they're talking, you're leaning forward, you're getting eye contact, you're staying calm, what that's telling the parent is that you're willing to listen to what they have to say. Because if they're upset enough to come at you with something, now you're showing that you're actually caring about what they have to say, diffuses the problem quite a bit. The next one, and like I said, the book I'll reference here in a little bit, is that late night DJ voice. And if you remember that late night DJ voice, it's very calm, very slow, not getting excited, very relaxed, right? And so just nice and easy. Yes, I understand what you're saying, and taking it easy. The next part is, and this is an unbelievably huge, it took me a long time to figure this one out, is whenever they come out with you a problem, let them talk the whole time. And this is where it almost gets to an awkward silence. So the trick is, you say, okay, what's the problem? And let them go. And just let them talk and write it down. Just listen, nod your head, get the information down. And it's not to try to develop an argument, but it's listen to what they have to say. When they're done, pause for a couple of seconds to make sure, and that's going to make it a little awkward for them. But what it also does is allows you time to process what they're saying as well before we come back and trying to come up with a solution. What it does is allow them to know you're listening. It also allows them to come up with ways to the problem, or actually for you to come up with solutions for the problem. The next part is huge. Repeat back to them what they said. So when you wrote it down, say, okay, it's my understanding, that playing time might be an issue. Here's what you're upset about. It's my understanding that, little Jimmy's mom over there keeps saying stuff during the game, right? It's my understanding that this isn't, that, practice doesn't go the way you want it to go. So whatever they have, you've written it down and say, is that true? I just want to make sure I'm on the right track here. So you're writing down everything that they're saying, just so that they understand. There's another trick with that book that I'll share. It's called Never Split the Difference. But he talks about, if you're really good at this and some to practice, is use the last 3 words that they say in your first sentence. And it's like a mind trick. And those last 3 words somehow in your new sentence tells them that you've listened to everything they've said. Okay. State that you see how they might feel a certain way. For example, with my son, whenever I had somebody come in and play for me, they said, oh, so-and-so got cut. And I say, what, I understand exactly how I feel. My son played, and, there's a couple of times when he didn't make a team, and it hurts. It hurts as a parent. And I could see where you'd feel that, right? I could see where your son's upset. And so now you're trying to empathize to show that you actually care about what they're saying. Because if we're coming at them trying to argue, that doesn't go well. It's now we're trying to show empathy to try to come up with a solution to get them to understand where you're coming from. The next thing is always a good trick is, okay, well, if you're upset about it, what do you see a possible solution is? This isn't saying that you're going to agree with them. This is now to have them start to think about something. So a lot of times people come with a big problem, right? And they say, oh, this is the absolute worst thing that could happen. Okay, no, I get it. So what do you think a solution might be? How would you see it from your side? And now what we're trying to do is we're engage them to coming up with the answer to the problem. All right, because a lot of times if we can give them ownership, start having them think about it, then a lot of times they'll come up with a solution themselves and realize that maybe, there's something that they can do to come up with it. The next word is kind of stay away from the F word. Everybody goes, what's the F word? That's not dropping F-bombs, but rather it's the fair word, right? Because everybody wants to use fair. Fair is not really going to be a problem or a solution to anything. We're just going to say, okay, it's not fair. Well, that's possible, but let's see what a solution is going to be, because nothing's fair, right? At the end of the day, how we arrive at solutions or problems is not going to be a fair thing. The next thing, if the child's there, ask them how they feel about the situation. Here's the trick. So they said, coach is being mean to me. And I said, okay, well, Fred, what things make you think that? Why do you feel that way? What have I said that's allowing you to think that way? And now, especially if it's gone to mom and said, oh, God, coach always says mean things to me all the time. Now you've put the little guy on the spot to where now he's got to explain exactly why he's thinking. A lot of times he will not have a solution for it, because most of us are going to be good people and say, oh, well, and now he starts coming up. And then if he says, well, you said this, I say, okay, I can understand you feel that, but here's what I was thinking. I can understand you feel it. Here's the way we go with it. And then also encourage them to speak open and honestly, because it may actually be something that you've got to correct. At the end of the day, we all make mistakes. When it's an issue with the player, ask the player questions for clarifications, right? This also helps the parent understand the issue well from the child's perspective. Make sure that they're not questions that are accusatory, rather arrive at a conclusion. That's going to be a big one. So I'm not going to ask why are you being a jerk in class? Or why were you being rough in practice? Or why did you smack Billy? Right? Instantly, that sets everybody on the defensive. So you're going to ask that how it is. What's the question? What do you see? What do you feel? And that allows the kid to come up. It also diffuses the parent. Exactly. For example, when the teacher came up when I went to the open house, and the first thing out of the teacher's mouth is, do you want me to tell your mom, or do you want to? Or you want to tell your dad, or you want to? Instantly, man, I'm toughen up. I thought, what is going on here? Right? So we got to be really careful how we ask those questions, making sure it's not accusing a child of anything. And then I always do this. When it comes in, whether or not it's the worst kid in the world, I always find something good to say about the kid. Hey, I'm glad we're here to meet, and I just want to tell you how much I love Fred. He does an unbelievable job of tying his shoes well every day. This is 3 minutes, that's a bad example. But anyway, but the idea would be to find something, he comes to practice, he trains hard. We like having him be a part of our team, so let's kind of get a solution with this thing. And then reiterate it in front of the child. I really love having Billy on the team. He's a great asset to what we have. He brings this, and this, and we're glad you're here talking, because we need to find a solution to make it better for all of us, not only for myself, but also for the players and for the way we're going to respond on for the future. Because we want Billy to be an important part of this team. We want to feel like he's a part. The next thing is this, and this goes back to, I think Jed said something about it. As a coach, the next thing is anytime any solution we arrive at today is not only for the benefit of your child, but more importantly, it's for the benefit of the team. So anything we come up with today has to not just benefit one, it has to be at the benefit of everybody. And as long as we're doing that, I think we're okay. The second it starts to take one child over the other, or doesn't benefit our team, that's not something we can agree on. It's not right for the rest of the team. We want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And with that, I'm going to pause it for a second. Any questions or comments that you guys have from that side? Like I said, I don't necessarily want to turn this into, I'm just giving you information. But Mike, you got any ideas or thoughts so far from what we talked about?
Yeah, I've been coaching for 30 years or so now. Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, you're doing great, Mike.
But before I became a parent, I'm much more sensitive now as a parent than I was prior to becoming a parent. I think the ability to put yourself in a parent's shoes and to empathize with them, even though as a parent, it's human nature to look at the individual, your own individual kid, within the team. And as a coach, our responsibility is there's nothing more important than the team, right? There's nothing more important, but the ability to put yourself in the parent's shoes, I think, is really relevant, and it's really important. I think that if a coach is a parent, it just makes it so much easier to do that, to be honest.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add into it? Because once again, it's great if I talk the whole time, but I'd rather open up for your experiences because there's a wealth of knowledge within our group that we have right here. So Ruben, anything you can add? Oh, you're muted. Ruben, you're muted. Perfect.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. You're good to go.
All right, cool. All right. I no longer rep. I'm sorry, I no longer coach. I'd been coaching for a couple of years. My oldest son's team. They were an 04 team,
Okay.
and I currently referee. But I remember as my time in coaching and as a manager is that sometimes, especially with the younger ages, you have parents that are very new to the game, and their expectations just might not be realistic, and they might not see the game the way, people that have been, in the game for a while, like some of us, that their expectations are just unrealistic. So sometimes parents can come from a standpoint of, wanting what's fair for their child, and they're obviously advocating for their child, which we're there to listen to them. But there's always, I think what needs to be done more, especially the younger age groups, is that the parents do need to be educated, socialized in what the game of soccer is and what are the differences between, some of the rules and some of the concepts of the game. Because, it's like, as a referee, it's almost like every weekend, you have parents sitting there right on the sidelines, and they're yelling for the ball's out of bounds. And it's only because the ball touched the sideline, the ball didn't cross 100% over the ball. And so it's like having to explain very basic things to them is part of the process of educating a successful soccer family.
No, I love it. Hey, that's well said. Does anybody else have anything to add for the good of the group? Because like I said, it shouldn't be just me preaching the whole time. I want to bring in your experiences because a lot of you guys will have things that you've seen or things you've dealt with. And the only reason I picked on Liz, Mike, and I'm about to get Omar here in a second, is that they've got their cameras on. And so
I think,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one of the challenges is that, there's a lot of money behind it, right? And so parents feel like when they're paying, X amount of money that entitles them to a certain amount of rights, playing time. I don't know that anything can be done about that, but I think that is one of the realities. It's a lot of money, right? And so for that kind of money, you want results. And the reality is the kid may not be there yet, right? And there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
That's always a hard discussion.
No, and that's coming up here in a minute because I hit that same point. So 100% right. But you understand that the parent now, given Scott's point, is that the parent now, whether he's paying a lot of money for it, has expectation for their child, and they all love their kids, right? And they all think that their kid should be the next level. And so this the point that empathy is you got to kind of see where they're coming from to be able to arrive at a solution. I love that you guys brought that up. And Ruben, great job with the referee thing. But I'm going to kind of reference back to the first one of these I held. We talked about the parent meeting, the first of the year parent meeting, where that's probably stuff that needs to be discussed, and 100%. And that'll kind of go to Liz's here in a minute. But with that, we'll kind of keep this thing moving. All right, so now as we start to look in, okay, the big thing is let them know that you're there for the child, right? But make sure they understand the team is the most important. And then we talked about that as well. When discussing solutions, so as we're starting to look at now to progress on into actually coming up with a resolution to the end, state that you can see how they feel a certain way, right? Try to put yourself in their shoes to understand why they're upset. 90% of the time, if you've listened well enough, you've actually given them an idea that you care. A lot of times that should take a lot of the air out of the problem. So now they can start looking how they can move on. but you got to show that you actually understand how they feel for them to get to that point. Ask them what they think the resolution should be. Put them on the spot. Make them start thinking. So I say, okay, I understand why you understand that playing is a problem, playing time's a problem, but understand that, you know, we're here to Scott's point, we've got to kind of win games too, right? And so what solutions might you see that might be up? Because as soon as we start taking you off, then somebody else has to come on or vice versa. And that may upset what we're trying to do as a group, you know, and make sure that you have clear expectations up front. Big thing is, if it's a problem with the child, ask them what the solution might be. Let them come up with a plan. And 90% of the time, by engaging the child, that also shows the parents that you care about their kid and how they feel. By engaging the child, then they start to think, okay, well, here's might be the solution we come up with. This may be something we do. And once again, I got to keep going over this. The biggest way that we're going to do this thing is make the parent understand that we're going to think of the good of the team. It's your job as a coach or as a teacher to take the overall picture of the team first. It has to be good for everybody. It can't be good for one. I can't make a decision based on one player. We're going to do it for the good of the whole group. And that should allow a lot of things to happen when they start thinking of resolutions. Say, look, when we're thinking about how we're going to overcome this, they understand that it's got to work for everybody. It can't just be for one. What's the solution going to be for all of us? And then once again, stay away from the fair word. No, it's not fair my kid doesn't get all the playing time. Well, it's not really about fairness. It's about, you know, what's for the good of the team. Try to honestly, and this is the hardest thing sometimes, because when you're upset, see it from their point of view. Once again, this is the big one. Always, always, always talk to them about how the actions of the child or whatever happens. So if they're upset with the way they're behaving, or you're having the conversation of the kid's behavior, say how that behavior affects the team. Never, ever relate it back to you. And this is something I learned in teaching that took me a long time. They don't care how you feel. And this is going to be terrible to say. They don't care if it makes you mad. They don't care. But what they do care about is, you know, when Billy acts like this, how do you think the rest of the players look at it? Right? So stay away from the poor me comments. Go back to how it affects the team and makes the team better. And then make them see, if you're a parent, and this is really to Mike's point, once you've been a parent, you start to understand how they could feel these things. Because as parents, we don't ever want to see our kids let down. But at the same time, it's probably one of the most important lessons they could learn. Sometimes it's okay not to make a team because it makes you either get better or find a different path. But you want to make sure that we all need to find a little failure in life to actually get better. Next thing is we're going to try to guide them to the discovery of the solution on their own. The trick is, if I tell them what to do, it doesn't last long. But if I can get them to come up with it, then that's a solution that's going to last a lot longer. And in the future, if whatever happens again, you can always refer back to, oh yeah, wait, when we had this discussion, you guys said this, and now it didn't happen. So now we go to the next step. Or you can say, here's what our solution was that we came up with. But here's the things that we don't want to do. So an example is, and I put it in red, why do you think they acted like that? That's way bad, because then that's a very aggressive thing, and it's not a solution they have to come up to. I want to get them talking about it. I want them to start thinking. And the goal of this thing is to try to get them to think of the solutions themselves without you having to direct it. And so what might be better? What do you believe is an appropriate response to whatever it is? So do you think that, you know, when you don't get playing time, that you being upset, what do you think an appropriate response would be? What would it look like to actually respond to this array and say, and I go, Mom, this is a big one, because you guys know in work this happens all the time. You know, somebody doesn't put your promotion. Well, is it going to be an appropriate response at that time to say this? So Jimmy, what do you think the appropriate response might be when you're upset about playing time? How should you respond? Now, see, what I'm doing is I'm getting them to talk about it. Let them come up with a solution. Okay. Another one would be, given that you want more playing time, what do you feel you can do outside of practice to improve in whatever area it is? So to Scott's point, if they're not getting playing time and they're upset, but the whole team is paying money, you know, and this is going to go for Jed in his player profile thing when he's doing scouting, but there may be things that you need to write down to understand when you come to the deal. Hey, look, you know, we really got to get better at dribbling, and we've got to find a way that when we take on a player, we pick our head up. So we're not just dribbling the pot. Maybe we need to pass, maybe it's defensive, but have very specific examples of what they can improve on. And then it's more of a question. Hey, so right now I think we're struggling a little bit in the dribbling area. What do you think you can do at home to help out with that? Next one is, how do you feel I misled you on the amount of playing time players are guaranteed? Now I'm going to preface this, if you're a recreational coach and it's 50% playing time, there's no question they get 50% playing time. And it's terrible because then you have nothing to stand on if you're breaking rules, if you do anything unethical, illegal, or immoral. None of this stuff works. Right. So you got to understand that up front. If you're doing any of those things, nothing that we talk about here is going to help out. So if you're breaking the league rules on playing time, that's on you. We've got to figure that out. But if it's something in a club environment, or even if they're not getting 3/4 of the time, but they want more than just half, then you say, what? How do you feel I misled you about playing time with players guaranteed? Now, what that's going to do, they've got to now answer the question. They've got to think about their solution that they're coming up with. How do you think you can do outside and to improve on blank? Or what do you think you or they can do to improve on? How do you think you would feel if they lost playing time doing them not playing in the position they feel best at? So for example, you know, and especially with ODP, this happens with us quite a bit. My son's a forward. Well, they feel like they're a forward because everybody's a forward when they try out for a team for some reason. I don't know what it is. Maybe that's the glamour position. They say, okay, yeah, no, I can absolutely make you a forward. The only problem is, how are you going to feel when you're not playing as much? Because right now, as a defender, you're rocking. I mean, you're doing great. You're playing great. But if I switch to this other position, you know, how are you going to feel about losing playing time? You know, is that something you're willing to accept? And now they start thinking, how do you think other players on the team will feel about your behavior? So if it's something where you're having to talk to a parent about player behaviors, you know, this is always a big thing. And I learned this out of the classroom. If I made it personal about you're acting bad or you're offending me, that doesn't ever work. But I always said, you know what, when you do that, what do you think the rest of the players think when they see you act that way? How do you think the other players feel? How would you feel, right, if you saw somebody else doing X, Y, and Z? You know, and this may be go to your parents too, when we talk about it too. That may be a parent thing. How do you think the other parents respond whenever you go nuts on somebody else's kid? You know, do you think they respond to that well? How would you feel if somebody said that about your child? You know, would that be appropriate? What would you do? You know, and a lot of times get them to come out. Because if I go and say, you're acting like a jerk in the deal, you can't scream at other people's kids. Then it's all, boom, we're now fighting. They're saying, and you know, other parents getting upset. And how would you feel if that person said that about you? And last one on this list is, how do these actions make the team better? Is what you're doing making us better? Right? It's coming late to practice all the time. Is that making us better? Is that making you better? Is that getting you your goals? You know, what do you think we can do to find a solution to this? But every time we're asking questions, not telling anything, we're allowing them to come up with the solutions. The big thing is when we're talking about calibrated questions is don't ask questions that can be answered with yes or no. That's a big thing, right? So words that should not be used, can, is, are, do, or does. Because like say, you know, do you feel like you need more playing time? Yes. Done, right? Quick one-word answers, we don't want that. I want them talking. I want them thinking. And when they're talking and thinking, then I can get it. Words that should be used as who, what, when, where, and how. Now, how do we fix this? You know, where do you think we can come up with a solution? But it's stuff like that. The goal, and this is the big thing with that book I'm going to reference at the end, Never Split Difference. You know, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. His thing was if I can get them to say that's right, there's a big difference between that and you're right. Because you know, if you have kids and the kid says you're right, that means they're done with you. I mean, so they always say it. So your child or a parent says, you know, you're right. That means that they just want to be done with the conversation. But if they can go in and say that's right, then all of a sudden now you've started to get them to a certain point. Now, you know what? That's right. That probably is that way. Then all of a sudden they've come up with a solution on their own. And you know you've hit the victory. And that's the goal that we're looking for. The big thing is this. Sometimes the parent's upset because of you, right? And that happens. The big thing is I want you to do, if it's your mistake, own it. And I'll give you an example. This last weekend with ODP, I didn't, somehow, I don't know what I did, but I know I did something where my website said we had 6 o'clock practice for one team, but in the SportU app that we use for communication to all the parents, it said 8 o'clock. It was 6 o'clock. Well, had figured it out at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I sent out emails. It's too late. Had 2 parents show up. First thing I did is find those parents saying it's my fault. 100%. I blew this. This is on me. And you can't be afraid to take ownership of that. There's been times in my career in high school where I turned myself into the athletic director because of rules that I broke that I didn't realize until I figured out later. But it's important that you own the mistakes, right? The big thing is if it's a mistake of an assistant manager, team mom, parents, referees, poor communication, etc. At the end of the day, guess what? You're the leader. It's your team. It's your responsibility. Own it. And that's hard for some people, especially in today's time. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to screw things up. And it's natural. It's human nature. But people have 1,000 times more respect for you if you first say, hey, you know what? I blew this, and it's on me. But here's what I'm going to do to fix it. Because there's two parts of that. You can't just own everything and say, oh, yeah, well, the sky's blue. It's my fault. It's my fault. No, you have to have a solution. You have to have a reason why you do it and how you're going to respond to it in the future. So there always has to be a fix and a solution, if that makes sense. And so with that, I'm going to pause for a second. Any thoughts or ideas so far? Jed, you got anything to add to it? I know you got a little jersey there in the background.
Sorry, it's my laundry room. No,
Yeah.
no, great, Warren, some superb points there. Really, really good. Obviously, I'm in the UK, and I did youth coaching for many years now, and I stood back a little bit, but I'm doing some more now as well. But you made some great points. That's kind of the point I said at the beginning. I think you almost covered it. Well, you've covered it really there as well about sticking to your guns. And it's like what you said there a moment ago. Is the team or the league where everyone gets involved and 50% play in, and if that's the rules, then you stick to that. And if a parent argues against that, then you say, well, you obviously agree to do. I mean, is there a parent sort of contract when you set those rules? Is that something you guys have, or?
There is, and what it is for example, on here, when you sign up for a recreational team, so it'd be like the little guys all the way to like 12 mostly. They've got within most association, there's a guaranteed playing time of 50%. So when a kid signs up, they're guaranteed 50%. Now there's times when, and this is like I said, most people I'm gonna take the good in people thing. Most people try to get it, and sometimes you make a mistake. And I know I've done it in the past where, you just lose track of time. And little Billy, I look back and I thought, oh crap, I haven't played him. He's only gotten like 25%. But the first thing I do is whenever I figure that out, first I apologize to the parent and I apologize to the kid right in front of both of them. And say, I mean, 100% didn't mean to do this. It just happened. And I apologize. We'll try to figure out a way, but I'm going to do my best and I make sure it doesn't happen in the future. I'm going to do, have my assistant coach, for example, keep time. But I want to tell you right now, I had nothing personal, had nothing to do with your child. It was 100% my fault.
And what you would do then next week, you'd say, right, you're going to play the whole game next week, or 75.
That's possible.
If that's possible with the numbers, but you try to make it up.
Right. No,
now.
for sure. And then that way, that'd be a solution to the problem as well. It may be like myself with the communications of time. That I can't blame anybody else for that. There's only one person. As soon as we find it, we own it quick as possible. And so they get it, right? But a lot of it has to do with communication. Now there's nefarious people out there that'll not play the kid at all because it's really important to get a really big trophy at the end of the year for a recreational soccer game, because that's like the World Cup, but only bigger, So, I mean, there's times we have people like that, which I can't really speak to on that.
Yeah.
Well, we've got it.
Like you said, if you've got a team now that you are aiming to get promoted and win the league or win the cup, and that's kind of agreed with the parents as well, they can't come back on that then either, can they? And say, well, he's not getting enough game time and the agreement was, well, we're at an age now where we are trying to achieve.
100%.
So
and
again,
it may be a thing.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I love it. And then that would be the point where now in the beginning you say, here, not everybody's going to get to play. You understand? We're going to do our best to play as much as possible, but within this rule, but it's not a rule. And then parents are going to be upset about that because I will guarantee, and everybody that's done this for a long time, mom says, oh yeah, I don't care how long he plays. I just want him on the team. Well, that lasts to the first game, right? That never lasts beyond that. And so then it's like, okay, and that's where that question was, hey, what part did I mislead you on? Because I must have blown it somewhere along the way because I thought up front, we were pretty clear on this thing. Now, obviously we want Billy to play, we want him to get better, but part of this is a competitive team and we're going to find a way. Now, here's the things I think he needs to work on. Now, what can you do within your own time to get that fixed?
Superb.
And so it's just like caring.
And that's us as coaches as well. Our job is the player that maybe hasn't developed yet or not quite there needs a little bit more work as well, and we'll get them there up to that level as well.
Yep. And then Omar, do you want to unpack that a little further? Because I think that's an excellent point. There you go. You're good.
Yeah, for me, it took me quite a bit long time to realize I just assumed that whenever I assigned something, whether it was practice or games or tournaments, that the parents just knew when it was, where it was, hotels to choose from, all the different things. And it took me a while to figure out, hey, I got to communicate as much as I can, because I'm also educating them that whenever we do tournaments, if it's local, we're doing this, we're doing that. If it's out of town, maybe we have dinner together as a group. So the parents are then socializing, get to know each other, building that camaraderie, and make it a fun, enjoyable experience. Not necessarily about wins and losses, but at least having the experience and talking to them through it as you're doing it, because sometimes we just take it for granted and think, well, they should know better, but they don't, because we haven't explained to them what the expectation is for the players, the parents, and us.
Man, I think that's beautiful. And Omar, I didn't put that in my PowerPoint, but I think I should have put it now. I'm gonna have to update it because you're 100% right. Hey, we can't assume parents know. We can't assume parents know about anything. And over communication is sometimes way more powerful, whether you use the SportsU or Mojo app or whatever app you're using. 100% over communicate everything. And if it fails, once again, there's only one person to blame. You can't say, well, mom didn't know about the game change time. Should have looked at this. Well, you know what? They didn't. And at the end of the day, it's your team and you're the leader. No, I love that. That's an excellent point, because that knocks about 90% of your problems off right there. Is over communication. I love it. Well said. Anybody else have to add anything to the good of the group?
I think that I think the communication is just crucial. It's just critical. I mean, before the season, before games, before practices, but one source of, I think, concern for parents very often is when the communication is in place, but then as a coach or coaches aren't consistent with their expectations and their guidelines and procedures and whatever level of play that might relate to. I think consistency is very important, because you see situations all the time where a coach will perhaps not start a player, perhaps not give them as much playing time as the parent would like, and then it happens the following week, very similar situation, and the coach doesn't necessarily apply the same rules or guidelines. I think communication is vital, but once the communication is in place, it has to be consistent.
100%. Yeah, because then once again, a lot of times the problem with parents and coaches is a coach problem. And I think you hit the nail on the head. So lack of consistency instantly loses credibility within the group. And so once again, it falls upon you. So some of the times when we look at these things, a lot of times that these are problems are created by ourselves and what we do. That's kind of taking ownership within that as well. I love that, Mike. That's an excellent point. And then Crystal, do you mind reading that out, or do you mind popping off and asking that question for the group, or do you want me to read it out loud?
No, sure. I can go. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. No, you sound great.
I think it's the biggest piece is I coach under 13 girls, and sometimes this happens. Actually, it happens a lot where there might be just a drop ball kick or just a singular kick, and I'll say, Katie, take the kick, and I've got a parent saying, Alice, take the kick, and then Alice takes the kick instead, because the parents are take the throw in. There's one specific parent coaches his daughter a lot, and then doesn't listen to what we have to say in our coaching skills, or utilizing our coaching skills. So I tried talking to the parent, and I get along with him really well. He's a great guy, a great parent, and wonderful family. But just would like him to just. I know it's hard. All the parents are always supporting, including me. Before I coached, I was doing the same thing. Yeah, after playing college ball, I was doing the same thing.
Right.
But that's the reason why coaches. I volunteer to do this. I don't do this I do it because I love it. So I'm just curious on how you would go about that.
Okay, there's a couple of things to add now. If it's a problem across the road, I'll show you an idea. But I think a lot of the time is, first of all, you can't confront the parent in front of that one's going to be a special case, because that's not going to want the kid involved.
Right.
This is going to be just pulling the parent aside. Hey, you know what? After practice on Thursday, can I talk to you for a minute? And then now, once again, pull them aside. It'd be ideal to go like Starbucks or something like that, or ask me on the field, say, I want to ask you a question. I asked Crystal to take that kick. And then you said, Adrian, take the kick or whatever. So let me ask you this. First of all, how do you think the rest of the parents feel about that? So if you were so-and-so's mom, how would you feel about you saying that?
That's a
Second
good
thing is, if I did this, right? So I said, X, Y, and Z, but then you come up with something different. How do you think your child relates to that? Are we helping them get better? So is she going to be a better player because of this? Or do you think she might be confused in the game? How are we helping her develop? Because my goal is I love your kid, whatever her name is, she's awesome. And she's such a great kid to have around. I love having her on the team. The only thing that kind of makes me concerned is that if we're both saying two different things, how do you think that's helping her progress? And not only that, but you think as a parent, like I said, you think she's gonna, listen to the coach? Would that be better? Or if she listens to you, what are we teaching her how to respond to things? And do you think she's gonna feel comfortable at come to you and bringing that up and just start asking those questions? And obviously you say, that's bad, doesn't work. Now, if it's a problem across the board, because I know I have this and Ruben will appreciate this for the referee side of it. If it's across the board with the referee, sometimes you got to find fun things to do. So one of the tricks I did in the past is I had a team in Midland that, man, they were awful to the referee, but and to be fair, I wasn't exactly a poster child of right and wrong either on how to treat referees. So I had to do the same thing in myself. But what I did is I went to Sam's and I got a box of blow pops. And I found my booster club parent, or in your case, it'd be a team mom, and say, okay, here's the deal. So they're coaching from the sideline, or they're yelling at the referee. Anytime a parent yells at a referee or yells at the changing up whatever, they get a blow pop. And so for Jenna, you know what a blow pop is? That's like a bubblegum lollipop that's got a candy outside and you suck on it. They figured it out pretty quick that meant they stick it in their mouth so they couldn't yell. And so just find fun ways of finding solutions. So it's kind of a funny way of telling them to be quiet without telling them to be quiet, if that makes sense.
That's actually brilliant. Well said.
And so, and then Liz, you want to go ahead and read that one out?
Yeah, I just had a question because y'all are way more experienced than me. And I'm sure we've all had this happen where parents seem upset based on body language or what they do or suddenly stop doing if they change their behavior, or they kind of make comments that other people hear and you might hear as a leader or a coach. But they are not ever directly coming to you. And so it's one of those, like, I can't help you if you're not ready to be helped, but if they're creating that kind of toxicity on the team, what might you do to kind of nip it in the bud and actually address what they're trying to complain about, but not really complain about?
Gotcha. So just from what we talked about so far, what's a possible solution you might have?
Well, someone else had mentioned, catch them at some point and just ask, can we meet one-on-one over here in this separate time and place? Which I think is helpful, and it actually lets them know that you're aware of everything that they're doing that's kind of sabotaging the positivity of the team. But yeah. And
then I would go back and ask them and say, hey, when you make those comments, how do you think the rest of the parents respond? How do they think they feel? How does it make the rest of the group go? So I think you're 100% on the right track with that. So I think a lot of times if you turn it into how others respond, how it affects the team, not how it affects you, but how it affects the group as a whole, people kind of start to understand that that's powerful. And then, Ruben, I think it's 100% true with that. Especially from referee, you kind of see the confusion put on the sideline when parents are going nutso and they're trying to overcoach or coach over the coach, because they saw soccer on TV one time, and so that makes you an instant expert as a parent. But when the things that come in, because it doesn't matter what level I've coached at, I've had the same thing. I've dealt with the same thing. I will say this one thing: don't ever confront that parent in front of the group, because that instantly puts them on the defensive. Anytime you have a personal problem with a certain parent, that has to be away from everybody else seeing it. All right, and that's kind of a huge key. Same with a kid. If you ever discuss something with a kid about a behavior issue, it has to be away from the group where the group doesn't know, because that instantly puts them on the defensive to whatever they have. And so I think you brought up an excellent point with that. Okay, this is going to be the hardest part. The most important thing in all these things is don't show emotion except for empathy. Don't get upset. If you start, if you feel your blood boiling and all that kind of stuff, it's time to take a deep breath, maybe reschedule the meeting, but you cannot get mad. Because if you get mad, then it starts escalating. And sometimes there's people out there that none of this stuff will work, and they're just trying to pick a fight. And so sometimes you win the battle by remaining calm, by asking questions, make sure they understand what's happening, right? Next thing is don't take anything personally. There's not, and here's kind of the thing I had. It took me a long time to figure this out. If you look at your team, you've got one upset parent, and you focus all your time and energy, and I'll give an example here in a minute, on that one, you lose the fact that 90% of the parents are super happy with you and everything's going well. But when we start putting too much energy on the one, we end up losing the rest, because then we start doing things that are affecting everybody else as well. And so a lot of it is don't take it personal. In fact, when I was at Colleyville Heritage, the last round I had one parent that still is that brave keyboard warrior behind the line, and he always drops little comments in all the time. Now, what's crazy about that is that I'm sure it makes him super happy, but at the end of the day, what he does doesn't affect anything I do now, doesn't affect anything I did then. It just shows that, by not responding, it shows who he is as a character. But if we start going back in and start taking it personal and start responding to stuff, all you're doing is fall into a game that never ends. Oh yeah, Lindsay, absolutely, it's recorded, and I'll have it up on the YouTube channel by this afternoon. And I strongly encourage you, because I've got this topic and all the other topics we've covered for this year on that YouTube channel. It's 100% free. And so subscription will help out a ton. Okay. And then don't let them bait you, right? So it's one thing, especially in the teaching world, you'd have that parent that did their best to bait you, or to bait you into saying something. And that's why you always have the witness with you too, because as soon as you pop off, they got you. And so sometimes you got to be careful with that. Okay. The next thing is, anytime they do it and say, hey, you know what, Billy is better than my kid is better than that kid. Don't discuss other people's kids or parents, whatever you do, because I will promise you 100% of the time, whatever you say about that kid and parent, that parent's going to take straight to the kid and parent. And it's a whole lot bigger issue. They will do that. Do not trust anybody, and do not talk about anybody else's kid or parent, because I'm telling you right now, that'll backfire on you quicker than anything else. And you want to stay away from that. Okay, so that's a big no-no. And in fact, in our preseason parent meeting, if you go back to that first webinar I had, I tell them up front, we're never going to, when you and I have a conversation, and I told this to all my teams, I said, we'll talk about your kid, but we're not going to talk about anybody else's kid. And the reason being is that you wouldn't want me to talk about your kid in front of other people. And so when you bring a problem, that's one thing that's off the table we're not ever going to talk about. Next thing is something that took me a while. If they ever threaten lawsuit, conversation over, you leave, done. You can't take any further than that, because now anything can be held against you. So right now, in fact, this happened a couple of times where parents said, oh, well, I'm going to sue. Sorry, I hate to say this, but right now the conversation is now finished. And then you go to the next chain of command and let them know what's coming. But you end the conversation instantly. The next part is this. Now, whether you're in a club situation, whether you're in high school, whether you're in recreational soccer, as soon as you find out about the problem, I would call the U6 rep and say, I just want to give you a heads up. Billy's mom's upset about this. I don't know how it's going to go, but I want you to know that here's the situation. Here's what's happening. Here's what I'm going to do about it. And then talk to them about the solutions that are possible. Now, the reason we're doing this is twofold. Number one, nobody in any chain of command likes to be surprised, ever. If it's your mistake, I would tell the representative or the next in the chain of command, 100% my fault. Here's what happened. Here's what they're upset about. I'm just letting you know. Here's what my solutions are. Right? But that way, they're not surprised when it happens. The next thing is, and this is kind of an old trick, I always discuss what I came up with solutions. Said, are you good with this? Are you good? Because here's what I'm thinking we're going to happen. And I usually ask them, what do you think we should do with the situation? Because what I always want to do is knew my backup was always going to happen. So when the person next in the chain command knew what I was doing, what we're thinking, we discussed it, whatever that next solution was, they're already aware of what's coming. They're not surprised. They've already been involved in what the solution is. And that way it protects you as you go. And so that's an old trick that I've done for a while. Now with that, I'm going to pause before I go over the resource here in a second. But is there anything else for the good of the groups? I know we're hitting right on an hour. I don't want to go much longer. And it's been an unbelievably good conversation. But does anybody have anything to add for the good of the group? Or any thoughts that I did not cover? Because you guys have brought some excellent stuff so far as well to add to it. Okay, and I'll tell you what, there's two books that have absolutely changed everything I've done as a coach. and it changed all I've done. The first one it's called Extreme Ownership by Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin. Unbelievably powerful. So what it's done is he takes the battlefield example that they got to a business example, combines it together on the principles of leadership. It changed everything I've done. And these are 2 books that I would read for sure. The second one is actually kind of a weird take of this thing, but a lot of the ideas came out of it for parent deals. It's called Never Split the Difference. Negotiating is Your Life Dependent On by Chris Voss. Chris Voss was a FBI hostage negotiator. So when this guy negotiated, he negotiated with people's lives on the line. And he's the one that came up with wants to go further into developing your calibrated questions. He goes deeper into that one. If you have parent issues, this is huge because he's the one that does all the body language. The DJ voice came from him. That's a direct quote out of that. The "that's right" comment comes straight from this book instead of "you're right." So I would suggest both those very, very strongly. Not only that, but I went and bought a car, used what he talked about in his negotiating skills, unbelievably effective. So I would say as a bonus, that is huge. And so both these guys are unbelievable, but they've changed all the stuff I've done as far as coaching. And I know both of them will really help you out as you progress on. Not really a soccer book, but more of humanities. And so both of those have been powerful. With that, I'll pause for a second, open up any questions you guys have. And then if they're, well, wait, go ahead. Who's got
Warren, this is Ben. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, Ben.
Perfect. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. I think it's been a really good time here. I would add one other book. So I've actually seen the Chris Voss. He does the videos.
Right.
And I've seen some of those. And yeah, he's a great guy negotiating. And when you mentioned a couple of those, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of those before.
Awesome.
Another great book that I've used just every day, and it's helped with coaching when I think about it as well, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a Dale Carnegie. I don't know if you've heard of that one. Super, super good. Matter of fact, I have the audio that I just listened to, I don't know how many times. But it does a lot of talking about controlling, and exactly what you're saying is, make sure you're controlling the narrative and how to kind of lead people and still be nice about it and get good results out of it.
It might be interesting because I've taken on that because I'll get that book for sure. And I know Liz has another good book that she put up, but maybe we need to start a book list reference list for coaches, because that is super interesting. I'll look at that, and then Liz, you want to talk about yours? And then Ben, I didn't mean to cut you off. We'll come back to you in a second. All right, Liz.
Oh, thanks for the feedback. Yeah, it's really great. It's one of those books. I listened to a podcast episode about the authors, and I bought it while listening to the episode. But it's all about giving and receiving feedback well, but also giving feedback well. Because I'm sure we've all had times where we get feedback and we realize, no, they're actually talking about something else, but it's coming out this way. And how to make sure that when you give feedback to someone else, it's exactly the way that the person will receive it the way you intend. So yeah, highly recommend it.
I love it. And then Ben, I'm sorry, I did a very bad job of listening. Hey, anything you wanted to add, Ben? I didn't mean to cut you off, sir.
No, you're fine, sir. I appreciate it. No, that's all. I put it in the chat too.
Awesome. And so hopefully it'll come up too when we come in, but I may attach all these books whenever I post the webinar on our YouTube channel. And with that, I'm going to shamelessly plug our YouTube channel. Yeah, please go in and go ahead and subscribe. Obviously, absolutely free. But we've had unbelievable presenters on it, and we'll continue to do so. It's both in Spanish and English, So we've got I even had the guy from Una Pumas, the youth developer, was unbelievable. That's in Spanish, but we've had people from US Soccer that run the licensing, all kinds of stuff. So also with that, anybody else have any other questions or thoughts for the good of the group, or any other book selections that I can write down and put within the thing? Anything you guys come up with?
This has been one thing we haven't implemented. I've discussed it in our association. I'm looking at it. Is maybe during halftime is having either one of the association board members and or one of the head referee kind of people actually going to the parent sideline and talking about rules of the game. And actually, you've got a captive audience. Obviously, as Ruben mentioned, you hear all kinds of things being a referee as well, of this thing is wrong or that. And so we've discussed, we haven't implemented it yet, but we have discussed seeing what we can do maybe to help out during halftime of parents. Because like I said, you definitely have a captive audience at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So that's an idea to throw out there for coaches as well.
Oh, I love it. Anybody else have anything to add in? Because like I said, at the end of the day, the webinars are geared to be for you guys. And so, and I see it as being a big team. So, I mean, with North Texas, we got an unbelievable amount of people that are involved. Jed came in because I followed him on some stuff. So, I mean, we've got people coming from overseas. We had people in Africa that are subscribed to YouTube, you know, people in Mexico. So all over the world is starting to get out. But at the end of the day, this is our own little world, our bubble. And if there's anything that you guys have to add within the team, I want to involve you in it. I want to encourage you as we start to keep progressing it with our webinars to be a part. But does anybody have any last thoughts before we close it out? All righty. With that being said, once again, I want to thank you for joining us. We've got our next Spanish webinar coming up on next Monday, following with hopefully a goalkeeper session in 2 weeks. And so it's going to be super exciting as we continue this on and continue to grow our education possibilities with North Texas Soccer. Exciting clinics are coming up soon. I know we've got Borney's filled out on all our grassroots stuff, and then we've got Allen Soccer Association hosted. And I have a feeling we're about to blow up our coaching education stuff as we start to progress in. But all that comes back to you guys, and I want to say a big thank you to taking the time out of your busy day to be a part of this. And we look forward to seeing all y'all in the future. Thank you very much.